Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to be building an AI chatbot using Python and Google's latest generative AI model, Gemini. The first thing we want to do is obviously open up our Python IDEs and then import the relevant modules. In this case, the relevant module is google.generative.ai. So what I'm going to do is import google.generative.ai as GenAI. And I run it and it says, well, there's no module such as generative AI that was found. So what we want to do is install this module first. To do that, we go to terminal and type pip install google.generative.ai and you just press enter, you wait for it to install. It quickly downloads everything and the installation is complete now. So let's run this and see if this works. And well, it does work. So now that we have this module installed, the next thing we want to do is we want to communicate with Google's Gen AI model, which is Gemini. So to do this, we're going to be using Gemini's API, which stands for Application Programming Interface. If you do not know what an API is, here's a quick recap. API stands for Application Programming Interface. Let's understand with an example. Imagine you're in a restaurant. In a restaurant, you place an order with the waiter, so you request for something from the waiter. The waiter then takes this request to the kitchen to a chef. The chef then analyzes this request, prepares the dish, and gives it to the waiter once it's prepared. The waiter takes this response, which is the dish that you ordered, and gives it back to you on your table. So APIs work in a similar fashion. APIs basically allow different types of softwares to communicate with each other, taking in inputs and giving out responses as outputs. So in a similar way, our Python program is going to request the Gemini API with a certain prompt. And a prompt basically is a certain search term or a certain question that you would want to ask Gemini. The Gemini API would then take this request, this prompt, to Google servers or the Gemini servers or the Gemini model, and that's where it would be processed, and it would prepare a response, which is the AI generated answer, and this response is given back to the Gemini API. Once the Gemini API has this response is going to be given back to your program, and we're going to be displaying it. That's basically what APIs do. For a deeper understanding about APIs, we'll be uploading a completely separate video, so make sure you subscribe to check it out. Now let's get back to our code. Alright, so here what we want to do now is simply create a new variable called API key, which stores our API key. This is a unique key that you would have to generate that would help you to communicate with Google's Gemini API. In this case, I've just created an empty variable for now. You move to another tab to Google and simply search for Gemini API. Once you've searched for Gemini API, click on the first link that says ai.google.dev and then click on Get API Key in Google AI Studio. Once you're here, you simply want to go up here on the top left and click on Get API Key, and then you simply want to click on Create API Key. Here, I'm just going to use Generative Language Client as a project and create this API key. Once the API key has been generated, which is going to be unique to everyone, it's better to not share it. I'm going to be deleting this right after creating this video so no one can really use it. I'm simply going to copy this API key, go up here and paste this API key right here. But we haven't communicated with the Gemini API just yet. Now what we want to do is we want to communicate with this API. So what do we do here is we want to configure Google's Gemini API in our program. So to do that, we're going to simply write genai.configure, and you want to pass the API key here that you've just created. So to do that, you're simply going to write API key as the argument and pass the variable API key. Now, once you've done this, just run it and you know that it executes, so we have no errors. Now let's create our model, or let's instantiate our model. To do that, I'm going to create a variable called model, which is basically an object, and we're going to write genai.generative model, and the generative model that we're going to be choosing is Gemini Pro. Let's run this. All right, that works. Let's just type model and see if it works for us. Yes, that's Generative model. It gives us the model name, which is model/Gemini Pro. So we do have our model instantiated. Next, let's just check this. Let's just test this out. To do that, let's create a variable called response. And in this response variable, we'll use model.generate content. And let's correct the typos. And here let's write a program in Python to print the first 10 even numbers from 0. And let's run this. So that takes a while to execute. Now we have our response stored in the variable res. If I just type out res, it gives me this whole thing, right? There's too much going on here. So to actually view the response, you want to print out res.text. And when you run that, it gives us this. So this Python program prints the first 10 even numbers from 0 to 10. So what I'm going to do is simply copy this whole response, paste it right here, and let's see if this actually does that for us. And yes, that actually does that for us. So from 0 through 18, it prints out the first 10 even numbers starting from 0. Awesome. Now that we know that this works, let's create a quick chatbot out of this. To do that, we're going to write a while loop. So now we want to write a while loop, which is going to be an infinite loop that goes on and continues the conversation until the user wants to exit the conversation. So first off, let's write our infinite loop. That's going to be while true. That's our infinite loop. Super simple. Next, we want to take an input from the user, the prompt from the user. So let's create a variable called query equals input. And then here we're going to make it look like Gemini is asking the user a question. So we write Gemini and then what do you want to know today? And on the next line in the string, we'll write your response, which prompts the user to type in their response. Let's see what this looks like. All right, I need to stop the program execution and run it again. And this is what it looks like. I'm just going to type something here, and this is what it looks like. So we have somewhat of a chat interface ready. Okay, so now that we have our query stored inside the variable query, let me stop the execution right here. We first off code out the exit clause. So if query equals exit, and let's correct that typo. If query equals exit, then you simply want to write print Gemini, and what Gemini says is simply bye. Awesome. So that's done, and you obviously want to break out of your loop. Once you've broken out of your loop, let's actually code out the response. So we're going to write response equals model.generate content. And what do you want to generate content out of? The query. So you pass the query variable right here, and then you print Gemini with a colon, comma, response dot text. All right, so let's see how this works out. Let me run this. It says syntax error, invalid syntax. Now that is because we need two equal to's here, and that's where we are. So your response, what do you want to know today? What is the radius of the Earth? All right, I press enter. It takes some time, and it says 6,371 kilometers, which is 3,959 miles. Awesome. So let's try something else. Write code in Python to print the first 10 odd numbers starting 1, and let's see how our response comes through. There it is. Here we have our response just like that. And well, that's the end of this video. We just need to test how to actually exit. So we just write exit, And Gemini says bye, and we have our exit clause set as well, so we're not always in the loop. That's your very quick AI chatbot using Google's Gemini API. If you've got any questions, put them down in the comment section. Make sure you subscribe for more videos like this, and obviously more courses that are coming up. And that's it. Until then, have fun, and I'll see you in the next one.